is Huay Ling Tay, supplier selection process of outsourced logistics services, a Lean Six Sigma approach. Dr. Tay, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you very much. Can you just a sound check? Can you hear me clear?
Yes, yes, we can.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for the introduction as well. I'm Huay Ling Tay from Singapore University of Social Science under the Logistics and Supply Chain Management program. And today, the title of my presentation to you is on our paper on supplier selection process of outsourced logistics service. Lean Six Sigma approach. This is part of our ongoing applied research project together with some of our students here under the program. So without further ado, let me first introduce the outline of today's presentation. I'll be covering the background, literature review, our key research questions, how we design the research, the method that we have been that we have used for this study. Why is there the motivation for this applied research? What are some of the key lessons learned? And what are the theoretical as well as managerial implication? Then I will end off with limitation and future work. Okay. So the first part, background, literature review, and research question. So just to maybe start by looking at a generic supplier selection process, I think based on literature, this is a generic one by Wu and All, 2008. So basically, this is the broad framework that we have been using as the source of reference when we first kickstart the research process. So basically, any supplier selection based on, according to Wu, supplier selection process will start by first analyzing the market condition, ascertain the supplier selection target, then come up with some guidelines, evaluate the suppliers based on the selection guideline, and then of course do a decision step of selecting the supplier, then under which there will be evaluation method that helps you in evaluating the suppliers. And finally, we will implement some cooperation or collaboration or framework, and that will bring us to the end of the supplier selection process. So over the years, we have seen that, there has been increasing focus on procurement function, purchasing function to make effective decisions, and of course, and then followed with the execution of supplier selection to create a competitive edge in the supply chain. So literature has also spoken about how establishing a mechanism of long-term supplier relationship is very key in order for organization to compete at the supply chain level in terms of cost, quality, delivery, as well as lead time. And researcher has also suggested that a process-centric view, taking a process-centric view in in clearly defining the transaction efficiency is important, and a lot of times is supported by the use of appropriate use of communication tools or technologies. So that's the background on supplier selection process under the broad framework of the procurement function. Next, we then look at the other part of the literature that we have reviewed would be Lean Six Sigma, which is basically a structured problem-solving approach that drives towards continuous improvement, taking a very process-centric view. So it is known for this DMAIC, which sometimes also called DMAC approach, which basically is an abbreviation of define, measure, analyze, improve, and control, with the problem at the center of the source, which is really problematization in a certain context and looking at the problem using using the DMAC approach. So of course, then you will start with the defined state, selecting the project or the problem and having a project leader to establish the objective and condition for examination or investigation. Then we make the problem quantifiable and measurable. And then we analyze using some established Lean Six Sigma tools and in order to diagnose the SEs or current situation, then come up with, under the improve phase, it's about developing and implementing improvement actions that seeks to address the gaps or the bottlenecks or the constraints in the context of the problem that we are examining. And finally, of course, once we have improved the situation, we are looking towards controlling the improved process, and then of course to document the project improvements with documentation and record, so that best practices can be transferred across different functions or even across organization, or subsidiaries. So that very much is about DMAC, Lean Six Sigma, for process improvement. So come back to the research question, then we'll go to the research question. We see that there has been a lot of research on procurement function, outsourcing, supplier selection, using many different methods. Maybe I think a lot of papers has talked about how to use multi-criteria decision-making approach in order to best select suppliers, right, in a most optimum manner. But less research are seen in linking a continuous improvement ideology, such as Lean Six Sigma, to support a more process-centric or strategic selection of logistics service providers. So here, then our research seeks to examine, to kind of provide deeper understanding, provide greater knowledge through this empirical case study in a healthcare technology company. In fact, it's a multinational healthcare company that manufacture healthcare medical equipment and products. So our approach was to work with the company to streamline and minimize the lead time of the supplier selection process by raising these two key research questions. So essentially, as research question one is about understanding the current state. So we asked, what are the factors that contributed to the inefficient supplier selection process? So of course, then the pre-assumption is really inefficient, but not because of assumption, but of course with evidence from the SAP system on the supplier selection process in the company organization. So, but we raised these questions to really deeply examine what was really the issue, because a lot of time practitioners know that they are inefficient, they are falling behind deadlines, but they are not really sure as to what are the bottlenecks, what are the constraints, and what are the root cause resulting in all those manifestation on the tip of the iceberg. And that's the reason why we are looking at that's the reason for the SQ1. And SQ2, RQ2, sorry, not SQ, RQ2, how can the organization tackle the inefficiency of the supplier selection process using the DMAC approach, which was what I've just introduced? So this second research question is really aimed to find out how we can take a continuous improvement lens, take a perspective to improve the first to improve the current state of inefficiency, and of course, and then continuously look at how to further improve it and in an ongoing manner. So that was our two research questions, RQ1 and 2. And next, I will be talking about the research design and method, the methodological part. So really, it's about the supplier selection process of outsourced logistics service providers. So first of all, let me, it is a case study approach, and here we are looking at using action research, as in we have already adopted action research study. So basically one of the researcher was actively working with the organization in the conduct of this entire case study. So this we are examining this multinational healthcare company. We abbreviated it with just as company A. And this with this slide, I'm introducing to you the company A, the background of company A, that has the core mission of improving people's well-being by prevention, diagnostic as well treatment, as well as home care, manufacturing of devices or medical products that support health prevention, diagnosis, treatment, as well as self-home care. So some of the products include nebulizer, pain relief, infrared lamps, so on and so forth, and sleep apnea mask. So essentially the supplier selection process for company A is triggered under 3 circumstances. One is there will be an alert from the SAP cloud-based system or when there can be a request to change supplier from the internal business unit. So or there's a request for supplier of a totally new service scope, new logistic service scope, for example. So these are the 3 circumstances when SSP or supplier selection process will be triggered in company A. So motivation for study, I mentioned what are some of the challenges faced by company A. So actually company A came to us telling us that they are with a background of large supplier base together with shortage of manpower that impedes their current freight and distribution business unit function. Sorry for not introducing F&D, is freight and distribution. So their current freight and distribution function was very inefficient in their current freight and distribution. So, sorry, distribution there, wrong spelling. Anyway, it's freight and distribution. Hold on, let me minimize my screen. It's okay, I doesn't seem to be able. Oops. Yeah. Never mind, it's fine. So now, so we also hear that there's rising number of contracts that has been, and because of that, over the years, there has been increasing pressure on F&D, the freight and distribution unit, to complete each process efficiently. So then we review the company A SAP reports that we've generated over the past 10 years, about 10 years or more. From 2008 to 2019, approximately 52.2% of the contracts were signed after the effective date of contract. So this really surfaced the deep problem that the company is facing. Basically, a lot of contract has lapsed before the next contract is officially or formally actualized. So that left the F&D company with a lot of so-called firefighting function that they have to salvage at the end of the day. So the difference in duration between the effective date and the last date of signature range widely at an alarming span of 3 years to 1.5 years. So there's a lot of, so I would say a can of worm has been unearthed, and we had to really deep into what was happening then. So the data that we've collected range from qualitative as well as quantitative data. So most of the quantitative data are secondary data, or I would say the data from SAP, internal SAP system of the company. And the qualitative data comes from interviews and surveys that are mainly done on site, observation, as well as in semi-structured interviews, as well as survey, online surveys that we have done using Google Forms with those functions that couldn't meet us face to face. So we gave them the flexibility of responding to a survey online as and when they are free, right? So and involve the F&D, Freight and Distribution Commodity Manager, and FAD executive. Oh, I look at the time. Surveys is with the local business teams, right? So we kind of earmark that how we apply the Lean Six Sigma technology tools in the various phases. So we identify the relevant Lean Six Sigma tools to be implemented in to be so-called act upon in the various phases on this problem of improving supplier selection for this company A. So this slide actually just lists the tools that the relevant Lean Six Sigma tools that we have applied in the various phase in the define, analyze, improve, and control phase. So we use SIPOC stakeholders analysis and process map for the define phase. We make use of bar chart, the 5W and 2H, and cause and effect diagram, Ishigawa, and as well as interrelationship diagram for the analyze phase. Improve phase, we make use of mainly the brainstorming with the stakeholders, the 5S, as well as pilot checklist. And finally, we have a communication plan and team feedback session at the end of the controls, which is ongoing on the control phase. So in terms of SIPOC, it is a tool that we have used to systematically lay out the inputs and outputs, as well as the supplier, the process, and the customer that is involved, as a high level understanding of the scope of the project. So this is a very good way to identify the key stakeholders. We find that it's a very good approach to identify the key stakeholders and beneficiaries of the final products. So here we earmark that who are the suppliers, which includes the procurement, the business, the legal department, of course, the logistics service provider, the insurance and risk management department, as well as the quality agreement department. So inputs involve reason for outsourcing, scope of service, the budget, timeline, etc., right? So an output definitely is the chosen supplier and the fulfill or the actualize or sign contract. So our customer here is the logistics service provider that's helping us to generate profit, the business, the procurement, as well as the end customer. Stakeholder analysis that we've used, of course, to lay out the roles and responsibility, as well as the function for the respective function that span from procurement, business, legal, the LSP, logistics service provider, the insurance and risk management, as well as the quality assurance department here. So so now in the next few slides is actually basically the presentation on the findings based in accordance to the research question that we have earlier raised. So what are the factors that contributed to the inefficient supplier selection process? So we found that it's really about top-down changes that hinder the communication within the organization. Here is more because there is no pre-announcement of any changes. Changes are all so-called cascaded top-down without proper communication within the organization that left the F&D department a lot of times so-called short-handed or kept last minute to do firefighting. So that was also another part was also unclear communication lines. There wasn't a clear communication as to who is the main point of contact for specific logistic services, that as in the point of contact that should be managing the logistic outsourcing, the different type of logistic outsourcing, whether is it warehousing or whether is it freight management, who should be the main point of contact. It wasn't clear and clearly communicated in that MMC that we are working with. And they are also not clear who is the main decision maker for each, who should be the selecting the supplier, right? The logistics service provider, right? There wasn't a proper system for information exchange and sharing within the organization between the stakeholders as well. So that were the three key root causes that we identify. So then what are some of the implemented solution was really, we came up with a proper system to ensure visibility using the 5S approach. This will then try to mitigate or try to address the changes that are cascaded top down without proper communication. So we establish a proper system for visibility through the 5S approach. Then we also establish a communication guide using stakeholder and further deeper analysis of the stakeholder analysis with that to address the unclear communication lines within the organization. And finally, to address the no proper system for information exchange, we establish a SOP to improve internal communication. Of course, SOP is just a paper. If people don't follow, it makes no sense. It's just a paper inside the drawer. So a lot of times it's also about, culture and getting people, not only the hard side of things using the tools, but also getting people to embrace the change, adopt a behavior change, to want to really communicate and make use of the SOP on the new platform to exchange information timely. So what are some of the key lessons learned? So this case study really highlight the significance of having clear communication, information sharing, and having a so-called embrace, I would say, adopted operating procedure reference in the organization to improve the internal process efficiency. So it's so much, although you will find that a lot of times it's still a lot, it's about breaking down silos, having a platform, or having people to adopt the platform to communicate timely, right? So we also find that a continuous improvement culture adopting this DMAP problem-solving framework across the entire function, supported by high-level commitment and involvement of top management, is critical in multiplying the positive effect in order to have significant impact across the organization, across different functions. So in terms of research and managerial implication, I think this paper contribute to the literature in supplier selection process, with adoption, with taking a Lean Six Sigma or continual perspective in kind of changing human behavior as well. And finally, I think it depends. We hope that it depends understanding on how organization can benefit from this structured problem-solving approach, so that they don't have to always firefight. So using a DMAP approach and also adopt some of the applicable or relevant tools in the various DMAP phases for supply selection, for improving supply selection process. So in terms of limitation, am I over time? Yes.
Can I interrupt? Sorry for that. We have just 1 minute left for question and answer from the floor.
1 minute left. I have 1 minute left, right? Am I right?
No, 1 minute for question and answer session. Okay. So you may have question from the floor. Thank you very much for your presentation. Thank you. So it's clear now. You have finished your presentation and you communicated what exactly you wanted to do research. So anybody having any question, put in the chat. We have just 5 seconds for that. Then, again, Dr. Lu, how many respondents in the qualitative data collection? So a bit of detail about your methodology and interviews.
As I mentioned that this was thank you for the question, Dr. Low. It's an applied case. It's action research. So we're not looking at a huge data set. And the number of respondents is really the key stakeholders that we have identified in the entire supplier selection process. So with regards to and most of them come from the FMD as well, the French department. So it's about 9 to 10 of that, 9 to 12, including the business units that are involved in so-called communicating the business requirements. So 9 to 12. Yeah.
That's really
there's a range, because different stakeholders are involved in different parts of the process. That's the reason why.
Right. That's a really great question, and the problem is with the single organization when you study and go out for publication, always the validity and the generalization of the results. Yeah. So it's because it involves so many departments are going deeper into the processes there within each and every business unit. So you can have kind of a support for methodological, what do you call the robustness. Yeah, thank you very much. And we have another question for Brian. You have a question there?
Yes. Good afternoon. Thank you, Catherine. Interesting research, and that's very good presentation. I have one question here. The current research, or majority of the papers that I'm currently reading, are highlighting that the COVID-19 pandemic has actually exposed how inefficient, fragile our supply chain management is. In terms of the supply selection model that you presented in the first place, how is it going to be affected by this pandemic?
Definitely. Thank you for the question. Although this wasn't the focus, but this is definitely one key question about supply selection in a post-COVID pandemic era, right? So now we are increasingly seeing that, in fact, our industry partners are increasingly saying that the focus now is on risk management and resilience management, rather than looking solely on cost-driven outsourcing. So a lot more focus is on risk, which supplier can increase my can strengthen my resiliency in the supply chain, which LSP would be able to better support me in terms of probably another pandemic, which LSP would have a more diversified networks that allow me to maneuver localized supply as well as regional supplies. So the criteria definitely have shifted, not so much of cost driven, but rather more of risk mitigation and strengthening the resiliency within the supply chain. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Tay. I'm really conscious of time. So could you guys give your reaction or clapping your thumbs up to Dr. Tay for her great presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. I will stop share. Hold on.
Yeah.